Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Constant Taylor, and welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest on the show, and you guys are in for a treat. Our special guest today is Nathan Jamail. Nathan has been speaking professionally for 10 years, and the content that he primarily speaks on is selling skills, leadership, and coaching. Nathan has spoken both nationally and internationally and is based out of Southern California. Nathan has written 4 books on leadership and coaching, including The Sales Leader's Playbook, The Sales Professional's Playbook, and The Leadership Playbook. Nathan, that's quite a bio, my man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Glad you took time out of your busy schedule to join us. Now, I'd like to kick off the program by asking you to talk about your speaking business, including what types of groups do you speak to and what type of content do you cover with them?
All right, so my groups range, I speak to 2 types of groups. Leadership, and that could go any style from operations to sales to executive to frontline, and then salespeople. I cross all lines of business, and so from construction to the U.S. Army to technology to telecom and the distribution. But I stick with only 2 topics. I do leadership, coaching, and then I do selling skills.
Okay, excellent. And with selling skills, let's cover selling skills first. What things do you cover? Do you take seasoned professionals in selling, or do you take guys who are just entering the workforce or the industry?
No, I all the way from rookies to veterans. And what I mean by that is one of the things I do is I'm a sales guy. So my last salary job was bagging groceries at the age of 15 years old. I've been a commission sales guy all my life. And even when I got into upper management, I still led sales teams as either majority of my organization or at least a part of my organization. And so one of the things I believe is that sales is a very noble job, and it's a very difficult skill. In fact, I would say it's one of the most difficult skills of any profession. See, in a lot of professions, you can learn a skill or a trait, and there's A plus B equals C. Well, in sales, there's no A plus B equals C. You're dealing with intangibles. You're dealing with people and situations which you can't control, but you must deal with. And so because of that, it's a very, very difficult skill. The problem with salespeople, what makes them great is their confidence. That gives people the perception that they're competent. The problem with salespeople is that confidence, when it gets in the way of learning, becomes arrogance. And so that's why you hear that been there, done that, got a T-shirt. And what I teach salespeople is if you really want to be a great sales professional, you got to treat it like a athlete. And that's why you'll see my books are all the playbooks. I use a lot of sports analogies. I use a lot of sports on my books, not because I'm an athlete. I was 5'3" in the 9th grade, my brother. I had no athletic career.
Okay.
Right. I have 3 daughters. I know every Frozen song there is. I can let it go. I can build a snowman. Right.
Right.
But I use athletic analogies and sports analogies because I treat selling like a skill, and it's real easy. You know, we see athletes, they practice 9% of the time, they play the game 10% of the time. And we expect them to go practice and work on the basics. And in sports, we love to say the basics make the difference, you know, the blocking and tackling, but in reality, no one really does it. Mm-hmm. So what I work with salespeople on is whether you've been doing it for 30 days or 30 years, if you want to be better at the greatest and the most noble job there is of sales, you must practice your skill set. You call it role playing, I call it scrimmaging. So when I teach selling skills, I teach more the power of the how and the why, and not so much the steps. Because when you look at the selling skill steps, you know, I've been at PSS and hundreds of selling skills trainings over my career as a young salesman. And the steps are very similar, right? Build rapport, ask open-ended questions, and map solutions, and overcome objections and close. What I teach people is how to actually create that excitement, when to pause, when to speak, how to be genuine, how to create likability, trust, and influence. So my selling skills are applicable, again, whether you're in 30 minutes or 30 years. And so that's what I work with salespeople on. And on leadership, I teach leaders how to coach people versus manage them. And so, there's a significant difference between coaching and managing.
Now, sticking with your analogy of sports and sales, there's the 10% of the time in which there's the action and the excitement on the field, and then with the sales when they're doing the presentation, when they're creating that excitement. And then there's the 90% that's really boring and mundane, the rote stuff. And what do you think what I've seen is that mastering that 90%, mastering those fundamentals, mastering the boring part, allows them to be more effective during game time. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely agree. In fact, I will take the quote, I can't take credit for, it's not mine, from the Big Tuna. And he says, my football players get to play the game. I pay them to practice. and very true to your point.
I like it.
If you, the 10%, the going on the sales call, the presentation, that's fun. I mean, that's the party.
Right.
And so a lot of people say, man, Nathan, if I can get to the appointment, I can close the deal. Of course, the hard part is getting to the dance.
Right.
And so it's kind of like leaders in businesses. I deal with a lot of small business owners, and they say, if the customers will just give me a chance, I can earn all the customers. Of course. So to your point, it's that 90%. It's that creating the opportunity and getting yourself ready for the opportunity, and more importantly, being prepared and polished enough to capitalize on it when the opportunity shows up and you don't know it's coming. And so, I say this quite often. Even when you see a lot of the successful salespeople, many of us successful salespeople are successful despite ourselves. Right? I mean, what I mean by that is sometimes you've been in business for 10 years, you got good relationships, and you don't have to work that hard. And then I always challenge people, I say, let's think about it this way. Let's say you're successful and you don't practice and train at all, and you're already successful. How powerful and how successful would you be if you practiced and trained just a little bit? And that's where it's like, good point, right? Because it's just talent. It's just talent right now.
Absolutely.
And some basic skill. What if you really fine-tuned your skill set and enhanced your talent? You'd kill it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could really relate to what you're talking to. I played football in high school, but I was second string wide receiver. But after high school, I got into actually racing, ski racing, downhill ski racing, giant slalom and slalom. And the preparation that it took, the mental preparation, because, a lot of guys say, hey, if I could actually get in there, I could close the sale. Well, really, could you? A lot of guys think, hey, if I could get on the field, I would kill it. But then they actually get on the field and they get killed. So it's that preparation before they actually get there. So I spent hours and hours and hours doing gate time, repetition. And then I would get into the gates during a real event and I would crash and burn. So I'd go back to the drawing board and then put it into real action. So doing that over and over and over. So I say all that to say that I can really relate to your philosophy of getting the discipline and mastering the fundamentals.
And I teach the same thing when it comes to leadership. That's why coaching versus managing. The same issues you have in that development of skill, focus, and the real focus on growth of yourself, you have the same problem with managers not being coaches, but not so much for themselves, but for the people who report to them. And so, for example, in my book, The Leadership Playbook, I talk about how corporate America is corrupt. And I don't mean in the sense they steal. I mean in the sense that companies go and they say, I want to hire these managers, and they say, I want you to coach your people. But yet they never teach the people how to be coaches. It'd be like me telling you, I want you to go out in there and join the PGA, but I'm not going to teach you how to play golf. Because I hire people who know how to play golf, and therefore you're a professional. And so we just give a demand and demand an expectation without teaching them. And here's what I tell people. When you give expectations without coaching, it creates high tension, that's bad. But if you create expectations and you teach people and develop their skill, that creates high intensity. High intensity, great results. High tension, high turnover. And so, it's one of those things where, you hear this phrase all the time, and I talk about it. I say, first I ask managers, have you ever said it? They go, yeah. And I say, the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. I'm like, wait a minute. Well, I just hit a trap door on that. And then the point being is, how many of us say, I hire professionals, I hire good people, and I get out of their way and let them do their job? Oh, yeah. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard when it comes to coaching. That would be like a professional football team drafting the number 1 draft pick and saying, I'll see you on game day because I hire good people and I get out of their way. Right? Well, you would think the head coach has lost their mind.
Right.
And I tell people the difference between a manager and a coach is, if you want to be a manager, that's true. But if you want to be a coach, your job is to hire good people and make them better. That's your real job. And so when I challenge leaders to do is say, listen, everything I tell you to do, and I talk about giving them expectations, making them practice, holding them accountable, mandating positive attitudes, everything I'm asking you to do is just I'm asking you to give more of you to them. And so, it's I tell people, being a great coach is a selfless job. It's like being a great parent. And I'll give you an example of this. And now, do you have kids?
I do. I have 2.
How old are your children?
9 and 10.
Okay, so you'll love this because you'll relate to this. I ask people all the time, how many people have kids between the ages of 9 and 15? And people raise their hand. And I said, now, how many people have employees between the ages of 20 and 40? And, of course, everyone raises their hand. I say, do you find it ironic that if our 12-year-old children did some of the things that our employees did, we would ground them for a month? Now, think about this. A 12-year-old child, we would ground for a month if they did something our 30-year-old employees, who we pay, did. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Right?
Absolutely.
And my next question is this. Why? Do you hate your kids or do you love your kids? And the reason is we love our kids because they're worth the trouble of grounding them. They're worth the pain that it causes us to teach them a lesson because we know it's our job to make them something valuable in life. And the reason we don't hold the employees accountable to it, because they're just not worth it. And then everybody says, wait a minute, that's cold. That's kind of cold. No, it's not cold. I'm just saying what you're thinking. And I'll prove it to you. And I say, then let's go through the reasons why we don't hold people accountable. First one, it takes time. That's our time. So selfish. We say, you know what, Nathan, I have to go through all this processes, and it's a lot of hard work. Hard work for us, selfish. It requires conflict. We don't like conflict, selfish. And most importantly, these are the 2 big ones. I don't have anyone to backfill them. So if I get rid of them or if I hold them accountable and they quit, I got no one to do the work. And I'd rather have a bad body than a nobody, selfish. And lastly, is that if I get rid of them or if I hold them accountable, the time that it will take me to replace them, find someone new, train them, teach them, ramp them up, whether it's sales or any other job, I'm out 6 to 12 months. And I'd rather have some activity or some revenue instead of no revenue. Every one of those reasons are about us. Now think about who benefits when you hold someone who's accountable, whether they're a good person or a bad person. If you're an overachiever and I hold you accountable, you're going to be 10 times better and you're already good. And so if you're an underachiever and I hold you accountable, either I'm going to move you up and make you better, or I'm going to move you out and let you go find somewhere else to either grow or stay where you are, but you can't be in my team. And I give an example of that is when you hold someone accountable, it's good for the person. Would you agree?
I agree.
It makes them better. It's better for the company in which they work for because now the results get better. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
And it's better for the customers or clients, whoever we serve, because now we're doing a better job serving them. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
And it's better for us because now we're truly making a difference in our team, our organization, and the people who we serve. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
the only person who were in the either side of the organization or the activity that suffers from accountability is the leader. And that's why I say when we don't hold people accountable or we don't coach people, it's because we're selfish. So again, the same difficult building blocks of what makes a great sales professional is what makes the difference between a sales or a great coach and a manager. And in fact, when I wrote the book, the publisher called me, Penguin, one of my editors at Penguin called me and said, Nathan, describe to me what the difference is between a great leader and a great coach. And I said, you know what? It's a very good question. So we had to put that in the front of the book. And I said, a great leader is kind of who you are, right? Honest, visionary, person, execute, give direction, passionate, honorable. A great coach is a great leader, and a coach is based off what you do, not who you are. So I always say a great coach has to be a great leader, but a great leader doesn't have to be a great coach because one is determined on who you are and one is determined on what you do. Does that make sense?
It does, and I would even add to that probably the common denominator there is that the great leader and the great coach is able to get things done through other people. It does a great job at getting things done through other people.
Right. Well, and I got to tell you, I've worked with some great leaders in my life who weren't coaches, and they would tell you, "I'm not going to coach you. I'm here to guide you." And they were compassionate. They were good. And I always tell people, if you look at it, and I even say this in one of my presentations, if you take the attributes of a great person, great leader, great salesperson, great customer service person, all those attributes are the same. The only difference is what they're doing for a living.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating information. And now with the last 60 seconds, what I'd like for you to do is to share anything with the listeners one message that you would like to get across from them before we close out.
One message that I would give to all the listeners is if you are a leader, you get paid to do one thing, whether you're in sales, customer service, operations, finance, CFO, CEO, CMO, CPO, CIO. I don't care what you're seeing, whatever letters follow it. If you are a leader, which means you get paid to manage people, you get paid to do one thing or two things, develop and motivate your people. And if you're more focused on the activity, job of your team, the results and the scoreboard of your team, the activities which they do, you're missing the boat. If you can learn to coach and develop and motivate your team, you can always be a coach in anywhere, in any organization, at any level, at any position, because that's the most difficult task that leaders have today. And like sales, it's a noble job. It's hard, it's rewarding, it's noble, but most people know what to do. I always tell people, if you read my books, it's real simple. Most of the things you read in my books, in fact, I will say everything you read in my book is common sense, but it's not common practice.
Very powerful information, Nathan. Now, how can the people learn more about the value that you provide, the services that you provide, and if they'd like to get in contact with you and speak to you, how would they do that?
Man, I always tell people go to nathanjamail.com. That's www.nathan, N-A-T-H-A-N. Jamail is Jamail.com. Go there. Google my name. I always advise. My best advice for people is real simple. If you want to get an idea of what we do and how I help organizations, anywhere you want, Amazon, iTunes, Barnes & Nobles, whatever, and buy the book. And if you like the book, you'll love the work. But that's how you can get a hold of us and find out what we do. We have videos on YouTube and the internet all over. And I always tell people, find the best fit for your culture. And if you want a coaching culture, we can help you get there.
Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was very powerful information that you shared with our listeners.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.